2020 has been a tough year for the sports industry. Many fraternities around the world had to halt activities. Soccer teams were forced to play in empty stadia and finish their league in a bubble, which felt very different from the normal games where there's singing and loud cheering. Let's look back at this year with Velile Mbuli, who is SABC sports journalist, just to give us a rundown of how 2020 was like, especially with the experience of being used to fans around, coaching you and giving you that psychological motivation. And all of a sudden, it's an empty stadium sounding so hollow. And Velile, it must have sounded strange to you as well.
Good afternoon to the viewers as well. Well, look, it's been very difficult, yeah. We have to say, especially for us as sports journalists, especially in football, because in football, we've not been able to attend matches at the Stadia from February this year. In fact, the last games were played in March. But also when you look at it broadly in how this has affected the whole sporting sector, it's been very difficult. To an extent that some industries are yet to operate at a full steam, like we were expecting them to before the lockdown. But I guess it's been different sporting codes, and it's not a big surprise that in South Africa, maybe the big three, football, rugby, and cricket, have managed to stage the matches. As we said earlier, also with football going through the bio bubble, which was very expensive. Hence, when they kicked off the new season, the 2020-2021 season, they had to revert back to the normal system of home and away matches, but still behind closed doors.
Yeah, so as a journalist, you have the joys of working from home, doing that virtual contribution. Before we went on air, we rudely interrupted you in your routine when you're monitoring what's happening in the world of sporting. I believe you were watching a game. Tell us about it.
Yes, in fact, my other eye is on the game as we speak. It's Sundowns. They are up against Jwaneng Galaxy. Jwaneng Galaxy is a team that plays in the Botswana Premier League. You will also understand that this is the first round of the CAF Champions League campaign, where the winners will proceed to the lucrative group stages. Sundowns is entering the tournament at this stage since they are one of the top 8 teams in terms of the ratings. In fact, I think they are placed 6th in Africa, but I think there were about 11 teams that received a bye. So the game has just kicked off. They are now in the 9th minute, still goalless there. At 4 p.m. in 20 minutes' time, in Angola, Orlando Pirates will also be kicking off against Sagrada Esperanza. That is a CAF Confederation Cup game, and the interesting lineups that the two teams have put out today. As you know, that the second legs of these matches will also be on the 5th and the 6th, respectively, of next month. And also tomorrow you have Bloemfontein and Celtic. They're also playing against the Rivers United from Nigeria, and the Kaizer Chiefs will be playing also in the CAF Champions League in the first round. They play against another Angolan team, Primeira de Agosto, who also happened to be semi-finalists in the CAF Champions League 2 years ago.
All right, so getting back to looking back at the sporting year, the return to playing also had its challenges. Do you think it's been handled very well? Because from time to time we were hearing of some players being infected by COVID-19 at some stage.
Yes, I think that's one thing that they did very well, especially during the bubble. In terms of maybe they were more upfront and also maybe transparent, especially with the tests, to say maybe Team A did so many tests and then there were so many positive cases, which was happening a lot during the bubble. Maybe after the bubble, we have not seen that transparency from PSL teams. But when it comes to rugby and cricket, you will know that the situation that we received, especially with cricket, we were recently hosting the English national cricket team, and the tour had to be ended abruptly because there were a lot of positive cases, and at that time they were just about to start the ODIs, and with rugby as well, we've seen so many matches in rugby being postponed some being cancelled because there's been issues of players testing positive, which is something that is not really happening with football. Sometimes you hear weeks after that a certain player has tested positive, hence, so that's why that player was missing, or even an official for that matter. So these are the chances, these are the cases which have been presented by this pandemic. But also, it's very expensive to do the tests because if you're going to be testing a squad of 40 people, which is players including officials, that's 850 rands per each player. And now you're doing that on a weekly basis. So I think here it also affects also the teams, especially which are playing in the first division, than those which are playing in the Premier Division.
So looking at the economic side of things, how has the sport been affected financially?
Oh, it's been impacted hugely. I mean, you know, last week we saw the derby of Toronto. On a normal day, that derby will be fully packed on the stands. TTM making their debut in terms of derby in the Premier Division, Chagoma Chamatzibandila up against Black Leopards. And we know that that is a huge economic activity for the area as well. For accommodation, for the local business people around that area who will be selling at the stadia, and also remember the proximity of the stadia as well, Toronto Stadium, to the mall there in Venda. You know, so already in terms of the direct economic impact, these are the people who are being affected. And also for the clubs now, because there's large crowds that go to Toronto Stadium, particularly also the Friday nights in Maritzburg. So those gate takings, it's something that's already missing. And also even in terms of maybe on the advertising side, it's slightly different because most people, almost everyone, is watching from TV now. So it means that there's more revenue that can be generated, but they also have to be smart in terms of how do they do that. Also in terms of activations, that the cup competitions, I think they were hugely affected. We saw with the Nedbank Cup first, and also with the MTN8. Yes, you can say they are saving in terms of budgets, in terms of spending, but on the other side, in terms of activating, like they do, because also you have to guard against issues of big gatherings and social distancing, all those things. So these are the serious issues. Even when it comes to cricket, when that tour had to be ended like it ended, and England had to go back home, Cricket South Africa lost a lot of money from that. And so it goes for rugby as well. You remember the Springboks, they had to cancel their participation in the Rugby Championship, meaning that Argentina, New Zealand and Australia had to proceed without them. And in terms of affecting the pockets of SARO, Rugby Union as well, that impacted on them negatively. Not to say anything about the Olympics, which were cancelled and now have since been pushed to next year to be played again in Japan. And you never know how things are going to be next year.
Looking at the losses in the sporting fields, especially with regards to gate takings, as you have already alluded to, how is the sporting fraternity going to make up for the losses if there are going to be matches where there isn't any money coming in? Are we going to see watching them live really impacting now viewers in terms of the viewership and subscription fees going higher in terms of the broadcasters who have the rights to air those games?
I think this is one area where those around the game have had to be very smart around it. You would have noticed that the broadcaster, which is broadcasting more matches of the local game, when they were releasing their annual financial records, that they had made a lot of profit. And part of that also comes from, because people have been at home and they've also seen some increases in terms of subscriptions as well. And also because now the games are no longer people cannot attend matches. They have no choice but to watch from home on TV. But also, this is a period where we've seen a huge increase when it comes to virtual communication, like we're also doing here. And we've seen some clubs being smart around this. And part of this have also some of the clubs and also some federations have been turning this into some sort of revenue generation as well. So this is the situation that the times of the coronavirus outbreak have brought to the world, not just to South Africa only. And I think there are trends which have been practiced, especially by international sports organizations. And by virtue of being members of these international sports organizations, we've seen some local federations like SAFA, like also the special member of the PSL, the clubs, with SARU, cricket, and their provincial unions as well. And to an extent also some sports agencies who carry the mandate of these activations and also sponsors of the game adopting this. But also this also calls now, because very few clubs, especially in the PSL, have been able to master the ways of communicating and also making sure that they remain relevant during these challenging times of COVID-19. And I think going forward, they've got to be very smart in terms of how they make use of this opportunity and take advantage as well, because if they do anything virtually or they do anything on TV, people have no choice but to watch.
All right. Thank you so much for making time, and all the best for the holiday season.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. As I close off, Sundowns is leading by a goal to me.
Thank you so much for the update as well. It's always good to have you. Shall I say, it's a pleasure doing business with you.
Looking forward to doing the same in 2021.
All right. Cheers, man. Velile Mbuli is SABC sports journalist looking at the 2020 sporting year right here on SABC News.